Okay, today we're going to be fitting our performance pack style rear wing to the second generation Audi R8. Now this is one of the videos that we get asked for most frequently. It's an install that you can do at home by yourself in your garage. It really isn't too complicated at all. Now if you've got the Audi R8 V10 Plus, you'll already have a fixed wing on the car, and our performance pack wing will go in place of the original wing. Now, if you haven't got a V10 Plus and you've got the self-raising rear spoiler, which would just be this panel here, then we also sell a conversion kit so you can fix that rear panel. It's actually a slightly different panel, and then you can have a full fixed rear wing like our performance pack style wing, or you could actually put one of the original V10 Plus wings on if that's what you wanted. Now that's a full OEM Audi kit that we supply, and then we paint match that rear panel to the colour of your car. Now before we get started, just a few things worth noting. So this is an aftermarket wing. This isn't one of our own. It's just on the car to show you how it is removed and how it goes in place. But you can see that if we wanted to, we could pretty much rip this thing off the car. Now for visual purposes, obviously it looks great. Obviously not knocking this in any way, but it'll just give you a little bit of an insight into the differences in terms of the quality of the products that you can buy for a car like this. And we were going to do some more information and videos on what goes into making something like our wing. We'll show you us painting one in the paint booth that's just behind the camera there. And it really is quite a complicated process to make something like that. And then we're going to stand on the wing and show you how strong it is, because that's something that goes through a huge amount of force. You're going to be driving your car on the track, for example, at high speed. You're going to have a lot of downforce going through that rear wing. And this isn't personally something that I would trust to take that kind of force, whereas our wing is designed for that kind of abuse. And you'll see when it's in place just what we're talking about. Something else worth noting is the carbon weave that we use. It's a perfect match for any Audi OEM carbon. So if you've got a V10 Plus, you'll have carbon side blades, wing mirrors, and a few other bits like that. All of our products, as mentioned in a few of our other videos, the weave is an exact match. Our rear wing normally comes with a straight weave, just like the standard V10 Plus wing, which is the most popular requested. We also do a V-weave with a center join. We can do pretty much anything you ask for. We can do forged carbon. We make everything here. We can do pretty much anything that we want. But it's worth noting that other products out there aren't quite the same. So this here is still a 2-2 twill carbon, which you would know as a carbon fiber look, with the kind of visual diagonal pattern going across the wing. But you don't need to be a carbon expert to see that it's a completely different weave to what is found on the rest of the car. For some people that's obviously absolutely fine, but it's just worth pointing out that if you're one of those people that wants everything to match and line up, then this really isn't gonna cut it for you, and you're gonna want something like what we're producing. So we're going to pop open the rear glass panel here for the engine bay and show you just how easy it is to fit one of these at home. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get rid of the engine cover, which just pops out. It's got 4 mounting points, whether you've got a standard one or one of our carbon ones. Just helps you get at some of the bolts a little bit easier. That goes out the way. So we've heard some people say that you've got to take the whole rear bumper off the car to fit one of these. That is not the case. There's only 2 panels that needs to come off. It's the service panel here, or the grille panel, and then the panel that the wing is actually mounted to. Now the service panel, you can see we've got one of our air intakes mounted to it, our carbon fiber air intakes. This comes off in exactly the same way. So if you didn't have one of these, it'll come off in the same way as if you did, because that air intake is mounted solely to that service panel. It's really quite easy to remove. So there's 3 fixing points, which we'll show you in close-ups now. One in this corner, one in this corner, and one in the middle. Yeah. And then there's some mounting pins in the back corners. So what you need to do is remove the 3 fixings here, and then you use a little wedge, trim wedge, to go between this panel and this panel in the back corners, and that'll release that rear edge once you've taken those fixings out, and the whole panel will lift out. What you might want to do is put a little bit of tape just in between the 2 panels, which means that when you put the trim wedge in there, you're not going to damage any of your paintwork. If it's never been off before, they are a little bit tighter, so it might feel like it doesn't want to go, but this rear edge will pop all of a sudden, so make sure you've got a good hold on it when you're trying to lever it. It might be worth having a second pair of hands to do that for the first time. So just be careful when you're taking that center bolt out that you don't drop it when you've got it loose. And then these ones, you will find them really difficult to get out. So you can leave them in place. Just be really careful when you lift that panel out that you don't drop them into the engine bay, or even worse, into the air intakes. So a little bit of tape in the rear corners will just help popping that rear panel off without damaging anything. And what you may actually find easier is once you release the front, a little bit easier to get a trim wedge in and release the back. Okay. Okay, so that's the service panel off, so you can see the exposed air intakes on the back of the car now. And now we've just got this panel that the wing actually mounts to. There's a few little tips and tricks to help make this a little bit easier, but what you'll want is somewhere ready to take this wing off and mount it upside down safely, where you're not going to walk into it or trip over. They're really quite awkward things, these. They're bigger than you think. And then you can remove this rear panel and transfer it onto your new wing and drop back on the car. So it's mounted in a few ways. There's 2 visible 10mm bolts, which we'll show you now, and then 2 that are hidden, which you can get to with a standard extension, which are on this side of the panel, but you still get to them in the same way. You just need an extension to get to those. And then nuts, which means you don't have to wind them all the way, so you unwind them a little bit, and that'll allow the panel to disengage at the back. So once you've loosened those a little bit, you don't have to keep unwinding those. There's 1 10mm here. It's easy enough, and then another one here, and then your hidden ones, you'll see like a little channel gap down there, and the same on this side. And you just put an extension in there. If I look down, you might just see it. You can just see it hidden back there. You loosen those off, and that'll allow the back edge. And then to actually finally release this off the car, so the wing itself is mounted to this panel with 2 bolts on either side, and then a large locking bolt, which you need a spline tool for. So I'm just going to show you a shot now of the 2 fixing points that the pins on the bottom of the service panel lock into, which are now exposed. Now the service panel is off. Now I've always found an easy trick for getting to the large locking bolts that hold the wing to the car. So it's actually like a structural fixing. It's a large splined bolt. Getting to that is quite tight. Normally those spline tools, which we will have shown you in a shot before, are quite long. You might be able to get a shorter one, but that you want to be really careful that you do not round the head off that bolt, otherwise your wing is never coming off. So Removing those fixing locators for where the pin off that service panel goes in means you can just get an easy access with one of these with an extension bar, loosen those off, and they should then wind out by hand really quite nicely. And then the wing will be ready to lift out because we've already removed these two 10mm bolts and then the two hidden nuts that we've loosened off. Okay, so we're ready to lift this off now. Those four 10mm are two off and two loose hidden ones. The large spline bolts are out that lock the wing to the car. The reason why these have got so much flex, which you might be thinking, going, well, if that locking pin is in, why does this flex so much? Well, that flexing point on this particular wing is one layer of carbon. It looks to us like inner fiberglass, which just isn't sufficient for holding something like this to the car. So you've got something that's essentially hollow, a hollow fixing point with a large pin through it, whereas on ours it's a solid metal arm, which is then that pin is then locked in. You'll see why that is so important when we've got our wing installed. This is ready to lift, so you can do this with two people or do it yourself, but you want to lift low because you don't want it to pop off all of a sudden. And if you give it a little bit of a wiggle, that will lift from the car. And there we go. So we've now removed, without having to remove the bumper or anything like that, we've just taken the service panel off and the panel that the wing is actually fixed to. We're going to transfer I'll show you now. So we're going to transfer this panel onto our new wing, and that's going to go straight back on the car. Okay, so you stick that. Okay, so we've got the new rear wing mounted to that rear grille panel, ready to go. It's just worth, while you've got it off, looking at how it actually mounts to the car. So you've got an indication of lining it up. So you've got these machined aluminium sections. That's what your spline bolt goes through. That's where we took off one of these little brackets just to give us a little bit more access getting to that bolt. But you can see why that is so important, because that is a structural mounting for the wing. So on the bottom of our mounting arms here, that's solid, and that's what clamps to the car, and you'll see why that makes such a big difference on the fitting itself. When you're lowering the wing down, this is a little bit easy to do with two people, but you can do it on your own. Those are the main things you want to line up. Remember, you've got those two hidden 10mm rear nuts, which line up with these little slots here and here. So you want to get those lined up, and then the front ones should self-align. And then once that's on, we'll drop the spline bolts in, then put those two 10mm, tighten up those two 10mm nuts as well. Then the service panel can go back on and we're good to go. Now this is a snug fit, which is what you want. There we go. That's the loose fit. Now we can get those spline bolts in. Okay, so as we promised at the start, I'm going to stand on the wing and just prove how strong it is. Now, I've done this before. The scariest thing is just not sliding off, as it's really, really polished paintwork. Obviously very, very shiny. So yeah, that's actually the only scary element about this. So, okay, there we go. You can probably see from the first wing that we had on the car that there is no way it would have held my weight. I mean, this is comfortably holding my weight. We've obviously done quite a lot of testing with this, and the only area that flexes is actually the aluminium mountings where the structural arms are held onto the car. So, yeah, no issues with my weight here whatsoever. I can actually feel myself slowly sliding towards the car on the very heavily waxed top surface of the wing. But yeah, no issues with that whatsoever. And I'm not the lightest chap in the world, so yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. I just try not to fall over whilst getting off. Okay, yeah, simple as that. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way, we can get the service panel with our air intake fixed back in place, put the engine cover back on, and then we're good to go. It's as simple as that.